The things that are happening inside of the commercial market today are strenuous with all of the that are able to work from home now and in a more virtual experience. The commercial world is having to change dramatically as to what is actually needed in an outside facility versus a large corporation that can now house most of their people from their home. How does a commercial agent earn money? The building owner, the landlord themselves, will typically pay the commission of the real estate agent, much like we do in the residential market. For lease transactions, commission will be a percentage of the total rent over the full lease term. And it's usually divided into a couple of parts. Half is paid upon the lease signing. The balance, once the tenant actually moves in and has turned on the lights and is actually open and running for business. These percentage amounts are pre-negotiated. It's in the commercial listing agreement, and your proposals will vary from market to market. But again, 100% negotiable. When it comes down to the commercial purchase, the commission amount is going to be a percentage of the total sale price. Inside of Florida, when it comes to business procurement, the business itself is a separate transaction from the building, the actual physical real estate property that's being transferred. So make sure that you're doing the proper amount of paperwork for that too. To become a commercial real estate agent, you still have to pass a Florida state real estate exam. You still have to be licensed in the state from the DBPR, and you want to make absolutely sure that you've got the specialized credentials through the NAR to support what can be a litigious experience. I recommend at minimum that you have the Certified Commercial Investment Member and Society of Industry Officers of Realtors at your disposal. It should be the very first accreditations that you get. There are some really good supporting accreditations out there for commercial, and the longer you can experience it, the closer you'll be to the golden seal of approval, which is the CCIM. So absolutely make sure that you take your time and your energies in these studies. These are not quick accreditations. They are going to also require a certain amount of experience under your belt to get them. So take your time, study appropriately, and make sure that you go. In Florida, they have a thing called transaction agent. Dual agency, let's go ahead and put that to bed right now. In the state of Florida, dual agency is not considered a legal practice. There will never be a situation to where you as an agent can represent in a single agent capacity a buyer and in a single agent capacity the seller. They do not believe there is any way for you to properly represent in a quiet and in a professionally secure transactional environment that you can represent both of them equally. What we do have in Florida is a transaction agent, which means that in a very limited capacity, you are going to administer the transaction while explaining the details of the transaction equally between the buyers and the seller. There's never going to be a time where you're going to wholly represent the seller in separation of how you're representing the buyer. As a transaction agent, all information is shared on both sides of the fence. You have a very limited specialization requirement for these because you want to make sure that you're being fair to everybody. So every detail is going to be shared. Every conversation is going to be shared. You are going to work as the transactional intermediary to get this to the finish line because they both had faith in you to be able to represent the transaction fairly. Please make sure to follow your licensing guidelines. If you were, depending on what type of role you were in for your listing originally, if you were single agent, you need to work through a transition, and that needs to be a legal document before you continue. If you were already a transaction agent, which by default, all brokerages in the state of Florida operate under that capacity unless signing separately as a single agent. So just for your knowledge, you're a transaction agent day one unless you sign a document that says otherwise. But you need to follow all the transaction procedures and transition documentation to support this if you decide to be in a transaction agent capacity for both sides. You need to understand agency relationships, and this is going to be crucial to you navigating a very complex legal responsibility this way. What I do suggest in the situations where where my agents are in this situation is we manage it at the broker level. We will put a designated agent in place as the selling agent, a designated separate agent in place as the buying agent, and then we will manage all things internally to the house. But I also have some very senior level agents that have managed these wickets very efficiently. We monitor all of these really carefully to make sure that our agents are protected. There are a lot of skills, additional skills that are necessary to be a transaction agent where you're able to represent both sides. You got to make sure that you understand transparency. You got to make sure that you understand mediation and how negotiations can happen when you're the only agent that both people are talking to. You need to maintain complete neutrality and confidentiality, meaning that they're allowed to have conversations with you, but if it doesn't have to do with the transaction, these are not things that you're going to get in the middle of. You got to manage your time very carefully because you don't have the advantage of using time as a leveraging point with one agent cooperating with a second agent. Now it's all you. So you've got to make sure to manage everything quickly and efficiently on your paperwork. You got to have the problem solving skills that are necessary to get past flex negotiations, and you've got to be able to do the paperwork for all parties involved quickly and efficiently. They've got to make sure to disclose at all times that you are the transaction agent and that you're representing both sides of the house just to make sure the transaction is completed smoothly and efficiently. There will be no single agent or fiduciary trust conversations that are going to happen between these two clients, and you have to make that very clear. Clients are going to always want to have their own special time with their agent. You cannot be in a situation where they feel like one is getting more time than the other. So make sure that you're managing that appropriately. There is no specific accreditation for a transaction agent. You simply need to know the rules of the road and how that you can monitor and manage this at a brokerage level and not as an individual agent. And then, of course, let's talk about brokers, right? The highest level of agency is the broker level itself. Real estate brokers hold an advanced license, and they have had to not only go through all of the licensing as a regular real estate agent, they've also had to put in the time and the closing percentages and the capabilities as a real estate agent before they qualify to go do it all over again and re-educate at a broker level. If they decide to go as far as broker and owner, there is additional accreditations and certifications that they need. As a broker, they oversee the real estate office operations. They have to help agents succeed in the industry and keep the liabilities of those transactions to a minimum. They mentor, they train, they host these types of educational events so they can make sure that their agents are the absolute top of class when they're representing the brokerage brand. They need to know how to recruit agents and retain the agents that they have. When agents come up with specialized problems on a transaction, they are available and they are ready to be able to expose how these situations occurred and what they can do differently in the future to keep them to a minimum. Most of the boutique brokerages, the owners of record, are active and competing agents. They do as much work as, if not anyone else, that's competing inside of the agency. On top of that, they have their owner, operation, and/or brokerage management duties. Very important to note, some states use this term differently. North Carolina, Illinois, Colorado, for example, refer to all licensed real estate agents as brokers in the transactional sense. But in these states, the broker role is actually called the managing broker, the designated broker, or broker in charge. So they have an additional title to offset the two. Skills that a real estate broker has to have is a little bit different than a regular real estate agent. They have to understand real estate law and compliances to a level far above what the agents need to understand so that they can protect and consistently educate their agents to keep them away from harm and away from unnecessary litigation. They have the capability of teaching, educating, and training and coaching their people. They need to be able to be readily available on the phone and have the availability to market themselves as a leader in their agency. They must always have a local market knowledge beyond just the properties that they represent or the buyers that they're working with. They need to know everything that's going on inside of the world of real estate, inside of not only their personal market, but the market of all of their agents, because their agents are going to come to them with those types of questions as they are procuring new business.